All right, Rob, let's get to it. A lot of talk now about Luka Doncic, which he led 36 points. Kyrie also dropped in 36. They walloped the Minnesota Timberwolves yesterday.
They were scared last night. They had all the pressure on them, remember? That's what – I'm sorry.
I mean, you can have pressure and still play well. I mean, you better know how to play well under pressure because everybody got it.
But I wasn't buying that. Oh, my God,
Right.
Like last night, it just didn't sit right with me, Chris. If those guys had played well and Minnesota beat them at home, okay, then maybe you could go, wow, they both played well and Minnesota still – won. They didn't play that well. They didn't shoot that well, at least. And I was not surprised. I told you last night I expected them to finish business.
Right. They did. So here's the thing. A lot of people are talking now about Luka Doncic. Is he the best player in the world? What are your thoughts on that?
Premature, ridiculous, boulder dash, poppycock.
Wow.
Yeah, ridiculous. He's not the best player in the world. He hasn't even won an MVP yet. And he hasn't even won a championship yet. I mean, if they get swept here, will people tell me after this series is over that he's the best player in the world? Like it can't be the prisoner of the moment. It's got to be a body of work where you look at it. People weren't really ready to say the Joker was. When he had that run in the postseason last year, Chris, a historic run, didn't he average a triple-double? In that run, and they win a championship, and he had won a couple of MVPs, not last year, but he had won a couple, and you coupled it all together, you looked and went, dude, this guy's the best player in the world. Yeah, right?
I think people, when they talk about it, and I do, we talked about it on First Things First with my co-host Nick Wright and Kevin Wilds, and I talked about it on ESPN on some shows. I do think people are saying he has to win this championship. And they're saying, like, you have to have some accomplishments, right? It's not just the eye test. But it's kind of like the assumption is if he goes ahead and wins this championship, is he the best player in the world? What do you? Because I hear you. If he doesn't win the championship, you can argue, but he just has to have some hardware. We're not going to give you that without some hardware. But if he wins the championship, does that change your mind, or what are your thoughts on that?
No, you might have put him in a conversation, but no, it wouldn't change my mind overnight. Because the other thing too is, I don't know, is he the MVP or Kyrie's the MVP?
Well, I voted him. Well, he's the MVP.
No, I'm talking about. I'm talking about
MVP.
In the finals.
Yeah. But he's their best player.
No,
even
I know, but
even if he doesn't win the finals MVP. That doesn't mean he's not. I mean, Kareem only won it twice in 6 championships.
That, but it'd be hard. People will be looking like Kyrie went off, Kyrie went blah, blah, blah. I doubt people will be waving a banner for Luka if he's not the finals MVP. Would you agree with that? It'd be hard for somebody to stand up.
He has to play well. I just don't put as much stock in finals MVP as a lot of people do. Larry Bird. I'm just saying, but let me tell you what. Larry Bird didn't win his first finals MVP in his first championship. No one was saying Cornbread Maxwell, who was the MVP, was better than Larry Bird. Like I said, Kareem won it twice out of 6. We still say he's got 6 rings, and we praise him for it. Like, I just don't think, and I'm different because you're Rob. I'm not. A lot of people do. All they're about is the finals MVP. It almost don't count if the star wasn't the finals MVP. But I don't look at it that way because of the history. Magic 3 times out of his 5 championships. Dr. J was not the finals MVP when he won his NBA title. So I just don't think that's the thing. I think, I'll say this. I do think, Rob, we're in an era. I certainly think he's in the conversation. I think, but he does have to win this championship or, a championship, but this one for our sake of our conversation. And then I think, Rob, we're in one of those eras. We know we're in the era of parity. And I think we're in an era where it is almost like personal preference. Who you think is the best player in the world. Because I don't know that it's, again, I'm assuming he wins this championship, that it's definitive. Because when Michael, before, in the 70s, it was Kareem. Was it Dr. J? Was it Bill Walton for a minute? Was it Moses Malone? Some might even said George Gervin. And then comes along Bird and Magic eventually. And that was kind of personal preference. Bird won 3 straight MVPs, won 3 rings. Magic won 5, but Magic had Kareem and Worthy and, a better supporting cast. And then Jordan comes along, Rob, and it's definitive. It's Jordan for a decade or whatever. And then there's, is it Duncan? Is it Shaq? Well, Shaq got the 3. And then eventually LeBron takes over and it's him for like a decade. So I think we're in one of those stretches where, some might, I think it's 2 players that are the best in the world. I do think Jokić and Luka are the best players in the world. Some would throw Giannis in there. I think he's 3rd. I think he's great. But I think the gap between their offensive ability and his is large. And I don't think his defensive excellence overrides that gap. And I think when you look at Luka and Jokić, Rob, again, he's got to have some achievements. And the MVPs, that's past. Like right now, and I voted for Luka MVP this year. But they're both excellent passers. They both flirt with averaging a triple-double every year. They're both great rebounders for their size. They both score at a high clip. They both can shoot the jump shot. They're both outstanding passers. I don't know if I said it. Defensively, neither's great, but they're serviceable, especially now. Luka's gotten better. Jokić has gotten better in his size. I like Jokic's defense a little bit better. One thing I do like better about Luka, Rob, is he's a more aggressive and assertive scorer. Like Jokić could really, there were times this playoffs where I wished he would, go get 40 or go get 35 for sure. But he's more of a LeBron Magic mentality, whereas I think Luka is more of a Jordan Kobe mentality where he's looking to dagger you. And he's a closer. Kyrie is too. They got 2 closers. That's why they've been so tough in these playoffs, particularly against Minnesota. Jokić can close too, but their kind of number 1 closer is Murray. And I think that's because of Jokic's kind of mentality. So I think it's a personal preference. Jokić is awesome. I don't see how you could definitively say Luka's better than Jokić. And if Luka gets this championship, I think there's an argument for him as well. So he's in the conversation for me, assuming he wins this thing.
Yeah, he's not in the conversation for me yet. It will take at least. But we're saying
it would
take at least that, and right. Again, it would take at least that to even have a conversation. And then I would have to see: does he have an okay finals? Does he have a great finals? Does Kyrie have a better finals than him? Like that plays into it. If he has a subpar finals, Chris, and they win, and Kyrie's the MVP, and it was clearly, wow, Kyrie took over and just whatever it was, the conversation will be hard to switch over to Luka and be like, oh, yeah, Luka's the best player in the world. I just can't see that narrative coming off of that. So it has to be him winning.
That's fair because you got a big mountain to climb or even get to in Dončić.
Right.
In
the Joker. Right. That's what I'm saying. Like so when you're talking about the greatest of the world,
I also don't think they win without Luka playing great.
No, I'm just saying.
And he's been better than Kyrie in every series, as great as Kyrie's been.
I'm just throwing it in as a caveat that could derail that conversation if somehow he wasn't, or he had an off series or whatever it was, and they still won in spite of him. One last thing, too, I want to ask you real quick. How surprised were you about Minnesota? I know that was your pick. I don't know what you picked. 6 games?
I was surprised at the way it happened. I mean,
I wasn't surprised they lost
last night. Well, yes, and I also was surprised that they got blasted because it had been such a close series. But right. I think this is good for them. We'll get into it later. This is what they needed. I mean, you want to win it, of course, but it just doesn't tend to happen that way in the NBA. I think it's great for Anthony Edwards. I mean, Jordan went through it. LeBron went through it. So many great players went through these times. And if he is that guy, he's only going to get better for it. And if the rest of them, Karl Anthony Towns and crew, do the same thing, then they'll be back and a force to be reckoned with.
And, Chris, it's just when you talk about the Joker last year, I remember I just brought it up, his historic run.
Right.
In the playoffs, averaged 30 points, 13.5 rebounds, 9.5 assists, almost a triple-double on the whole entire playoffs. And his shooting splits 55, 46, and 90. And his team went 16-4. I mean, it was an unbelievable.
The dude is phenomenal.
Yeah.
The dude is phenomenal, but so is Luka. You know, I've been saying he's Luka legend from day one. And, I mean, we'll see if he's got to finish the job. There's no doubt. But, Jokić, Rob, became the first player to lead the playoffs last year in points, rebounds, and assists. And Luka is on that pace right now. He's leading the playoffs. He's the first ever, actually, to go into the finals, having led through the first 3 rounds in those categories. So they're both doing some historic things.